Hopefully, we'll have a good discussion today. So the topic is basically about how next generation communication networks can help manufacturing. Right? As you know, India, I believe, is 17% of the GDP is from manufacturing, and we would like to kind of increase it. If you want to go to 5 trillion, we have to really scale up the manufacturing's contribution to the economy. But how do we scale up? Because scaling up, one of the issues will also be labor. And that is where automation and advanced technologies like communication technologies can potentially play a role. But in what way, what are the challenges, what are the roadblocks, what are the promises? I think that is what we would like to discuss. And out of this meeting, hopefully we'll have better understanding of what we need to do, and especially for the ministry and the government, if there are a few things which they can take and help support for the industry, I think that will be really a good achievement for us. If nothing else, at least educate and inform and have a good discussion. So with that very brief preamble, what we thought was we'll have 2 rounds of discussions, and then we'll open it up to the audience also for further Q&A. So in the first round, we wanted to kind of really ask the question, is it really needed? Are these next generation networks really needed? Is it just a hype? Because we have some very eminent people here from industry who are consumers of such technology. Mr. Uday Prabhu from Bosch, one of the powerhouses of manufacturing. We have from TCS and Capgemini, experts who have global visibility as to what the global industry is doing, right? So it will be good to hear their perspective. And representative from one of the leading vendors of next generation communication equipment, Nokia, who is also here, who can share his perspective from the equipment side of things. So let me start off first with Uday as to from a manufacturer's perspective. Where do you see, if you want to really increase the manufacturing's contribution to the GDP, what are the best practices, and what do you think is the need from a communications perspective, right? Are these advances useful to you, and in what form? And what are the roadblocks?
Yeah, thanks. Firstly, welcome to all the panelists. It's a very complicated topic. Thanks to the institute to have us here. Any technological upgrade is a question of economics, right? It's fundamental economics, especially in manufacturing, where cost per unit plays a massive role in any decision that you make, right? Finally, it boils down to that. If you take network-enabled manufacturing today, it's not just the network that comes into play, correct? Network is one of the enablers. You need to look at, how do I upgrade my equipment? How do I leverage data, right? How do I convert the data to productive use, right? Because it's a fact today that many industries are generating petabytes of data, but less than 10-20% of it is actually used, right? So how do you actually do a holistic calculation about networks, products, software, and look into account the overall productivity that it's going to generate? In manufacturing terms, you have a concept of cost per unit of work, right? So how do you convert that when you bring in a new technology? So I think all these factors play a massive role to take decisions. Being from innovation, we love technologies, right? We love to build stuff. But as they also talk about in innovation, what is the desirability, right? I mean, your question is, do you need it? What is the desirability of bringing in networks like 5G. The desirability is very good, right? For example, if you're trying to up your manufacturing by a factor of 2, right? It's not easy. I mean, all the manufacturers can be testimony to that. You need to increase the amount of supplies that you bring into the factory. You need to increase the productivity of your machines. You need to improve the quality of your workforce. You need to improve the kind of maintenance actions that you take in, right? And this is where a technology like 5G can do wonders, right? Because it kills the latency between multiple processes in the factory, right? And that's what it brings in. Today, if you assume that the time taken for information from plant to go to your supplier and the materials to come back takes time X, it's primarily because of the latency that is involved. But if you're able to improve on that, then you can get more stuff done. You can create topics like just in time, which has been a buzzword for a lot of decades. We can actually bring it about. If you're talking about the previous panel of collaborative robots, it's also about timing, right? How can you decrease the latency between operations to operations to operations, right? It is also important that you identify the weakest links in your entire chain, because if you have a very fast process in one place and a very weak process in between, then the weakest link causes your entire productivity to go down. So I think it requires a holistic thinking process. It requires innovation at every element in the whole manufacturing supply chain, and it has to be done systematically. But in terms of whether it is going to add wings to your manufacturing, absolutely.
Thanks. I think you have. Yeah, I think this point of holistic view is very well taken. But I think what you're saying is that networks is an important piece of the whole, and so it's good to kind of look at next gen technologies. Let me turn to Shrimati Monica. She working with multiple and so we'd like to hear from you your experience with your clients and customers in terms of their adoption of these advanced networks. Is it happening, and why are they doing it? Are they seeing real gains, and is that something the Indian manufacturers should also think about?
Okay. So hello everyone, and thank you for having me here. Referring to what Uday mentioned about 5G being a good technology to be considered for manufacturing. The first point which I would like to make is we need to look at 5G with a perspective. While it's the 5th generation of mobile technology, it's the 1st generation of industrial mobile technology. So there's a difference between the maturity, but then it is a technology which has been specifically developed for the industry. So the only and only KPI by which we can actually measure 5G is the success by how industry adopts it. If it doesn't adopt it, then 5G is a failure. Of course, you can have 5G advanced and 6G, but very simply put, that's the KPI by which we telecom professionals measure 5G, and we are right now very fairly faring not very well with it, to be fair. And the reason for that is it is not easy to develop such a technology. Uday himself mentioned that network is just one component of the entire enterprise architecture. And again, the purpose of 5G is not to replace the industrial Ethernet or other short-range technologies. It is to act as a converging technology. And hence, it's a journey and it's a process. Globally, what we see is there is a clear interest on 5G. First of all, a lot of industry forums have contributed to the forming of 5G. The biggest one being 5G ACIA, which is, by the way, chaired by Dr. Andreas Müller from Bosch. So Bosch is playing a key role in defining the standards of 5G and 6G. So just to give you a global perspective, I will just take the top industrial equipment manufacturers and give you a perspective. Starting with Bosch, they are literally the champions who are kind of leading the global industry in defining what industrial wireless connectivity would be, 5G and the future. And which is where Bosch has already now evolved into defining what 6G means. One of the key requirements of 6G being it has to be an evolution technology to 5G. The one clear ask of the industry is that there has to be a continuity, there has to be a shelf life of a technology, which logically then helps in the adoption. And of course, this is also a clear requirement because the adoption cycle itself is so long that it better have a shelf life. So that's Bosch. If we look at Siemens, we had the speaker earlier today. This February at Hanover Messe, Siemens launched its first industrial 5G product. It's going by the name of Scalance M. So Siemens again has a lot of industrial connectivity products. The industrial connectivity products come by the name of the Scalance product line. They have Scalance N, they have Scalance IoT. Scalance M is their new product which supports industrial 5G. It is already commercially launched and its first pilots will happen by the end of this year and then of course the scaling. The other industrial equipment manufacturer globally would be Schneider Electric. Again, Schneider Electric has a dedicated program on 5G. The key areas which Schneider Electric is looking with respect to 5G is one on all the material handling. And this was mentioned by the previous panelists also, how material handling is a key requirement in the industrial world. When you talk of material handling, you talk of mobile robots or you talk of hoists and cranes on all those operations. So immediately, all of these operations have a key role when it comes to 5G, and this is what Schneider Electric is experimenting with. The other area is process automation. Specifically, I think one of our panelists referred the 5Ds, specifically for the 5D tasks, oil and gas, chemicals, mining, all those difficult, dirty, dangerous, the 5D tasks. That's where 5G or any connectivity plays a key role. So that's about Schneider Electric, their focus being on key process automation tasks and key hoisting operations, which will then impact steel plants, ports, energy, and all other sectors. On the other equipment side, not the heavy equipment, but for example, taking the example of Honeywell. Honeywell already has GSM 4G compliant products, and they are now upgrading them to 5G ready. You similarly have many other, providers like HMS Networks and then Fraunhofer, IPT and others who are now coming up with 5G ready. So globally, 5G products, 5G industrial ready solutions are coming, but again, their availability is just starting. And, just for everyone's knowledge, and then kind of finish it here, it's a bit of a, detail, but the industry perhaps needs to know that the 5G development itself has been a journey. We first had 5G non-standalone technology, which used 4G as an anchor. And industry was just not happy. They don't want any dependency. Industry is very clear. They want to be independent. They want to be in full control. So they did not like 5G NSA. And plus, the other issue with 5G NSA was the fact that 5G standalone would not be compatible. So it will require a device change, which again questioned the basic requirement of the industry of the longer shelf life. So it is only now when 5G standalone is available, and now when private network maturity, where 5G in a box, small compact solutions are available, that 5G is now commercially industry ready. And so 2023, we are actually globally seeing commercial deployments of 5G. You can refer to the GSA reports and other many global reports. The top sectors where 5G is being adopted is manufacturing, mining, oil and gas process industry, and public safety. Public safety, especially in Europe, where you can now use multimedia, video calling, location tracking, and all of that. Public safety, sunset of Tetra, and moving into 4G, 5G is another of the top use cases. So that's the global.
Thank you, Monica. I think what you're saying is that already manufacturers are coming out with products, and so that means they do see a business potential for this. Let me turn to Radhakant. Kind of going forward in this thread which Monica started, I wanted to ask you a slightly out of syllabus question. Put you in the spot. Not too much out of syllabus, but I'm just kind of thinking about, Monica mentioned all the big names, right? Bosch and Siemens and so on and so forth. What about the small manufacturers? You think they can benefit? Like, if I have a Pina, I have something where I'm making, you think they can benefit from this next generation technologies? So just your thoughts.
They have nothing to lose. Okay, that's one word. There's a lot of technology debts with the biggies, the people who have been just upgraded 3 years back. The OI would have been like 5 years or 6 years. Typically, it takes 10 years. But in the current age, it's a 5 years of amortization that's what take. So for them, it's a difficult thing. We really need to know where to do 5G, where not to do. Is it a stepwise or just a leap? That's very critical. So we have done a lot of survey inside our group itself, Tata Group. It will be difficult. Yeah. So we've done a lot of survey in our own group companies as well. The organizations have their cycles of business. And typically there is a technology refresh cycle when it comes in. Blindly go with what is latest. There is no point of leaving with the technology debt. Now, what is the delta cost of going with the NEM or the network, which is 5G, 4G, or wait for 6G? What you see is that in a 5G to 6G, serious modulation changes are happening in access networks. So if you can wait for 6G, it is like, would you like to wait for iPhone 17, not buy, stay with your iPhone 6? That's again, it's individual choice or business choice. But what we do see is it's a delta cost. It is, if it is a medium scale organization, maybe around 3 to 4% of your upgrade cost will only go to networks. Anyway, you are upgrading your robots, you are upgrading your automations. The network piece will be delta. You have to have networks. Either you put Ethernet or you put a Wi-Fi. And we have seen I have gone to a lot of labs in AT&T. There is a very clear-cut understanding. With Wi-Fi, we can do so much. Unregulated, unreliable. Security is always compromised. You need to do a lot of spending on the securities. Whereas if you go for 5G, many people would have put his brains, it's in the 3GPP, security is taken care, your spectrum is regulated, interference is understood. So there is a controlled environment where you can do the reliable manufacturing. Now, topic of scaling. Of course, it gives you a scaling. It makes you do a lot of impossible tasks, which you can't do with a Wi-Fi or a wireline or a network. It's just imagine 4 milliseconds. A roughly designed network can give you 4 milliseconds. A maturing network will give you 10 milliseconds. Imagine a communication you're doing inside that coverage area. A typical coverage area in a band 78, low band, 1.2 to 2 kilometers, it will give the 40 watts ERP. So within that communication, let's say it's a 10-tar leg is 4 milliseconds. I was talking to one of the booth I had been, so how much of computation time you're taking for image analytics, how much of the process 1, 2, 3, 4, all over 100 milliseconds, you can actually manage your entire process. Imagine the precision manufacturing you're going to do. So a lot of things we are discussing, like how it will change the image of India. Of course, Indian products will look much more nicer, much more consistent in the quality, because it's, when you have a 5G network, your manufacturing outcomes is a consistent, it's a precision. You always have a right of rejection in the first round itself, in the conveyor belt. So all these use cases are done, you can always get a benefit. Answering to your question, if a small, medium, or small scale enterprise, if he is starting to automate, he should choose NEM. Okay, nothing to lose. Maybe a minor cost, not a really big extreme cost. Now, cost. If you see the OEMs, we are also doing some bit of it. Cost and value are two different things. Same OEM X, OEM A will give you price in either in 1 or half or 1/3 or 1/4. Price could be like, actually cost could be 1/4. And the value it could be giving more. So hence the final offering price is based on the value it is giving. So based on the structure, you can always get a price benefits. And the MSMEs should take a risk. The reason is all these OEMs in the 5G is in a new stage. It's a many cases only on a POC and POV, and they will give give their best, and you can actually get in a really negligible or very small price to experiment in your network, and maybe large industries like Bosch may not afford it, but the small ones can afford, and they can do it in the name of experimentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Radhakant. I think you made some compelling points. One is that there is an inevitability, is what you're saying. So you might as well jump on the bandwagon, A, but there are some real benefits, is what you're also saying, and the incremental cost might not be that much, especially when you look at scaling up. And you think about, maybe 3, 4, 5 years downstream, what network you have should be able to handle what is needed there. So, yeah, I think very interesting points. Let me turn to Satish from Nokia. You have been in the forefront of selling this advanced networking equipment, and you have also worked in Asia Pacific region. What is your sense from the manufacturing houses, the powerhouses in Asia, in China, Japan, Korea? How are they? Are they adopting 5G? I mean, are they much ahead? And are they competitors to 5G? I mean, like here.
Namaste. Thanks a lot for this opportunity. Very pertinent question, as in, like, we need not always start from scratch. We can always learn from experience of others. So from that perspective, it is very pertinent to look at what's happening in the other regions in our neighborhood. Certainly in terms of, say, industries in, for example, Japan and Korea, which is directly under my area of concern, and China, we have separate teams, but there certainly, first of all, awareness that connectivity is a tool to improve productivity, to improve efficiency, to improve safety, is kind of at a higher level as compared to other geographies. So first, that understanding is there. So if an industry, say in Japan, is told that, come up with a plan to, say, for example, improve your productivity by, say, for example, 3x or 4x, of all the tools that the industries who have been running much before wireless technologies came, they will be using all those tools. For example, how they tweak their production lines, how they optimize supply chain, etc. But then connectivity and getting intelligence to drive improvements in productivity is an important tool that they consider these days. So therefore, from that perspective, awareness as well as adoption is very high. They're also participating with the technology providers more and more in terms of indicating what their specific needs are. So, like, for example, I mean, not to take offense, but for example, in like academia, we like solving very tough problems, right? We want to create latency of, like, for example, in the like in the domain of sub-milliseconds, right? If you come to technology providers like Nokia, we are also not as bad, but almost there. So we also want to create the most compelling technology so that we can justify that, it has to be very sophisticated, and hence you can buy new ones. But then sitting as a technology provider from the perspective of communications, we have also realized that it is very difficult to predict and like prescribe to people like Bosch, what is it that you need? So the collaborative approach that we see in these geographies, and you did not take name of Europe, but there actually is where we have the most, where we have the most dynamic ecosystem, where people like Bosch, Siemens, Schneider Electric, plus technology providers like, for example, Nokia, Ericsson, Capgemini, and then you have got startups, device vendors, all of these stakeholders come under a single roof, and then they discuss what are the problems that you are facing today, what are the problems that you anticipate tomorrow, and there what role can be played by connectivity. So we see such kind of collaborative approaches across different stakeholders in these geographies, which is also reflected in the way that we see adoption of technologies there. So I think the most important thing is, adoption. As Professor Subito was telling, education is, I mean, if your mother says, don't put your hand into the fire, I mean, that is education. So like that, nobody has seen 5G before 5G came. So we have to use our shared experiences to really anticipate what could be the benefits and what are the problems that can be solved maybe by using 4G today, which can then be projected to see what benefits you can get from 5G. So that's the that's the perspective that we have from the other geographies, that there is more participation of the different stakeholders, and hence leading to greater adoption of network as a tool to improve whatever their KPIs are. It can be productivity, safety, efficiency, whatever. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think you have hit upon a really important point out here, which will lead into our next round of discussion, which is the collaborative approach, right? So the groups are coming together. Because I think the next, now that I think all of you have made a very compelling case that we need next generation networks, it's really critical. So the question then is, and already, the bias has been towards 5G. I think you already made some strong case for adopting 5G. But what is the reality? I mean, can we go beyond the hype of 5G? Where are we in India? I'm not concerned only about India, because this is important, because this is the feedback which the ministry can take and then pass it on to the PMO and other important people. Where are we with the adoption of 5G? Is it really easy to adopt 5G? Can the costs actually be brought down? Can we have more players, or are we stuck with a few big guys? This whole thing of collaborative approaches seems to be missing, at least. I mean, I don't see that in the country, even though we have been talking about it. What is it that we can do to do the kind of consortiums which are happening in Japan, Korea, Europe, and so on? So maybe I'll start off with Uday again to share your perspective. And I want to also ask the question, are there competitors to 5G? Are we getting blindsided? Like, for example, Wi-Fi, right? I know there are some issues with Wi-Fi, but as an academic, if I want to do research, it's just much easier for me to get a Wi-Fi system. I can buy it over Amazon and get going, whereas 5G, I still haven't been able to get a 5G system, and Satish knows. I mean, it's much, much more complicated. So how will innovators even come in and develop solutions? I mean, what is needed? So,
yeah. I think I want to switch the conversation a bit away from 5G to what you, as I said, what are we trying to achieve? You need to look at it from a manufacturer's perspective, right? A manufacturer doesn't look at 5G as 5G, right? He looks at how can he manufacture something at the lowest cost, manufacture something at scale, at speed, and also look at how can he manufacture it reliably, right? So fundamental principles of manufacturing, whether Wi-Fi does the trick or 5G does the trick, is a matter of economics that you need to build into your design, right? And if you look at it on these points, right, scale is becoming one of the biggest challenges for manufacturers, right? Especially small and medium enterprises. Can they get the market to generate scale, right? And once that scale is generated, then the economics starts to fall in place, right? And so you need to, again, go back to the fundamentals of how can I create an ecosystem where I can achieve that scale at the lowest cost possible. And that's where I think the power of networks comes into picture. How can the industry come together for adoption? So the greater the adoption, then the lower the cost, right? It is difficult if a few manufacturers pick up the gauntlet because they have the ability to, right? The costs are going to come down for the whole population only if there is mass adoption, right? How can you enable mass adoption? That will become the next question. can governments get involved to support that accelerated adoption? And then the question comes into how can you innovate on top of this speed? Now you have established very fast highways, right? Basically, you can consider 5G as a ultra speed highway, right? Now, do you have the cars to drive on it, right? Do you have the right tires? I think you've seen a lot of examples of great highways, and then you have tire bursts happening, right? So you need to add on to the networks with products that can actually use that network speed, right? So you have the ability to transfer gigabytes of data. But what exactly are you doing with the data? How can you use the data? So how can I bring in artificial intelligence? How can I bring in smart robotics? How can I use the data to do predictive maintenance? How can I use it to shorten supply chain latencies? How can I use it to collaborate with my OEMs and create just-in-time networks? So I think the fact that 5G can provide that infrastructure highway is understood. But what are those use cases that we can create? No, in Bosch, we have a concept of reliable distributed systems, right? So today we have a plant in Dresden, which does semiconductor chips. It's one of the most automated facilities in the world, right? We do the 300. So we do the silicon for autonomous driving there, and it's completely automated and it's wired. I think the stats are like 500 kilometers of cables, right? So why do that instead of 5G? But the point is that you look for reliable distributed systems, meaning you are looking for latency, you're looking for reliability, and you're looking for redundancy, which is currently offered by wired networks, but it is in the roadmap with 5G, where your low latency networks are going to come into play, right? And so once you have the reliable distributed systems, then you can introduce closed looping. You can introduce robots that can collaborate with one another because there is determinism in the whole network, right? Like you have in automotive vehicles today with. So determinism is important. Reliability is important. And this is in the roadmap for 5G, right? And so people have to make those bets. Today, already with release 15, 16, you are able to get more than 10x of productivity with 5G, right? You can get 10 times the amount of data transfers possible. So what are you doing with that? You can do much already. But if you lay the foundation today and then plan for automated systems, plan for collaborative systems, plan for reliable distributed redundant systems, then I think there's a huge amount of possibilities. But for that, the industry has to come together to do adoption on a common scale, right? If it happens in pockets, then the adoption is going to get slower, right? So how can networks? I think we have created certain networks, special interest groups on robotics and 5G and things like that. These have to gather steam to make recommendations to the ministries, create say maybe clusters as a panelist mentioned earlier, and create more buzz, more use cases that SMEs can take as examples, right? Once you create strong templates, then the templates can be rolled out faster. I think that's what is necessary.
Yeah. Yes, I think you have raised one really, I mean, among various points, I pick up on your point about scale. That is, you need to create large volumes to get the costs go down. So it's a chicken and egg problem. How do you create the volumes? And you're suggesting getting people, groups come together and so on. I wanted to turn to you, Monica, to get your perspective on what are the roadblocks for us in the country to adopt 5G at a much larger scale, especially for enterprises, right? If you want enterprise to set up 5G, Do you see some roadblocks which are there which can prevent them maybe, and other things which maybe one can suggest to the government to help, and support?
It's fine. Okay. I think I'll mention the roadblock, but I'll also kind of mention the solution because I'm working closely with the Department of Telecoms. I have some visibility as to the work being done. So I think the biggest roadblock, and to which I think Uday also mentioned, is the entire local availability of solutions being available at the price point and which our country operates. We are a price-sensitive country. We are a high-volume, price-sensitive country, and all the global solutions for any new technology will always be on the higher side price-wise. So basically, to cater to our Indian requirement, we need solutions which are one low in cost and even more better, which are localized, because then they can cater to our local demand. And that's exactly what Government of India and Department of Telecom is now trying to activate. First of all, the initiative of the Interministerial Committee and the 5G web program, they're trying to activate the Indian ecosystem to get more active and collaborative when it comes to new technologies, specifically 5G. The other one is the 100 5G use case lab program that is primarily only open to domestic companies. This is again to activate Indians solution providers to be ready with 5G industrial grade solutions, which can then be used for these use case labs. The third point would be, I think, the devices, which automatically, logically will flow both from the labs and also will flow from the telecom service providers, the CSPs, because once the demand picks up, and this is something which at least I learned today, that, bulk of our manufacturing is through MSMEs. And one key thing which is there for MSMEs is the fact that the solutions have to be standardized. And the MSMEs most likely will either put a very lightweight 5G solution or will typically use 5G solution as a service from the telcos, because that's what will be easy to deploy, low cost, easy to maintain, and then also meeting their requirements of if you're catering to 63 million MSMEs, then you also need the pan-India availability of 5G, which only the telcos can provide. So in that regard, if you look at the situation today, the telcos are rolling out 5G, so that's the availability is there. The push towards 5G for industries is coming with the local ecosystem getting activated. That is also there. So I think it's now just a matter of time, and specifically a call out to Uday's point, we now need the industry to get activated to come up with these standard templates, use cases and all, basically create showcases, lighthouses where it works. And the other comment which I have with respect to 5G, and to which Uday also mentioned, is exactly the timing thing. If I already have a working Wi-Fi 4 or a Wi-Fi 5 solution or a latest Wi-Fi solution, why would I change? I mean, in the end, what I need is wireless connectivity. Does it really make a difference between Wi-Fi and 5G unless there is a compelling need? So in that regard, at least my understanding, given the fact that we are doing industry 3.0 and 4.0 together, and most of us, at least in the industry, don't use Wi-Fi, as well look and invest in new technology. And one caveat which I think we need to make the industry aware is, if you look at the old technologies of Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi 4 or Wi-Fi 5, they are not compatible with the later versions of Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7, you will have to change the device as well. So if you're investing in a new Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7, as well look at 5G also and do a cost benefit analysis. If still the localized solutions don't meet the price, please go ahead with Wi-Fi. Hopefully that would not be the case, because the local points will meet. Just to explain you this with an example, I don't know, many of you might have read up. It was a big news 2 weeks ago. Apple has opened up the entire Apple solution, the Apple devices, to 5G for industries. How? They have basically opened up Apple to support private network setups. So from iOS 17, any Apple device can latch to a 5G private network. Any Apple device. And they are now implementing industry-specific requirements like geofencing and so on and so forth. We perhaps need an equivalent of that in India.
Thank you so much. I think I want to pick up on 2 points and kind of pass it to Radhakant on those 2 points. One is, the sense I get from you is that we don't need to ask anything more from the government. We are good. It's only the private people's job now, right? I mean, the industry has to drive it. So no work for you. But I want to come back to that because you also mentioned private networks. I think enterprise would like to have private networks. Is there, and then, from in terms of enabling more service providers to enter rather than just the big three, is there something we can do, the government can do to enable that to happen so that we have many more people who can offer such services? Is there any issue with spectrum? Are you happy with what spectrum policies are there? Does anything need to be changed? And I was told that we have only 10 minutes, so I request you to keep it, please. Yeah.
Your first part was the question, second part of the answer.
Okay.
Yes, government has to do on the spectrum. There is a lot of sensitive issue. So sensitive issue in the sense there is a lot of money spent by CSPs, the service providers, to buy these expensive spectrums. And whereas if they open it for the enterprises, there is a lot of money in the table which it will be considered. And I can understand the situation from the government. I work with all of the mostly as well. The other part is there are two ways these spectrum works. One is on the FR, which is actually below 6. Which has very high penetrations. It means actually it can penetrate the walls, and it has much more propagation characteristics in terms of loss. But at the same time, it cannot go far. So if you have a small industry, it has, let's say your boundary is around factory floor is 400 meters to 600 meters. Better go with band 258, which is 26 gigahertz. It is very small form factor. Cost is very low. If you talk about your previous question, so what is happening? There are a lot of solutions available on the FR2, so which we call as density, densely populated 5G networks, all this stuff. It is there. On the device perspective, from the industry, we are not talking about handsets. The IoT devices, CPs, and all, they are very much there. China, Taiwan, and India also coming up, and I think the voice ecosystem is doing very well. There are a couple of organizations which this Mr. Modi's government has really done a fantastic job. I'm there for last 3 years. They have been doing a lot of. This is the first time government has actually started giving to the private sector. It was always going to either academias, that too only IITs, not the RECs. Then it was only going to the CDOT or the respective government or public sector organizations, but private sector, it is the first time government is giving, and a lot of them are benefited. In this Bangalore, at least I can count 10 of them who have at least built some products, built some prototypes. And this, India, US, the Prime Minister's announcement, that gives the testimony that we have an ecosystem which is pretty much readily available. We are ready to deploy this in the US rural networks. So they want to swap their Chinese equipments, and Indian ecosystem is already ready. So your previous questions about whether India is ready or not, the ecosystem is available. In terms of the equipments, the CPs, they are there. Handset wise, there's a struggle. The price point has to come down, but yes, hopefully that answers.
Thank you. I think you're very optimistic, and that's good to know. I want to kind of pick up on some of the threats all of you have raised, which is creating a consortium, creating use cases with people coming together to drive the ecosystem. The government is also very supportive. And I want to ask Satish to again kind of maybe share his perspective with the learnings, what we have seen, how it works in the advanced countries. What can we do out here to really push it further? And can MHI do something, especially in some way, to help accelerate the adoption of these kinds of technologies?
Sure. So I'll take an example of how in other countries some things have been a success. We have a forum so we have a forum in US, NextG Alliance, which is working on 6G related pre-standards, concepts, discussions, right? So there, America realizes what its strengths are. It is in the web scalers, right? It is in the university research. and then it is in the big market. But then in terms of actual equipment providers, because of whatever acquisitions, mergers, I mean, that is now concentrated either in Europe or in China. I mean, you know, so that particular organization will not, I mean, whatever success it has come, it would not be without participation of people with competencies who have been allowed to participate from other geographies. I can very humbly claim that NextG Alliance is actually nothing without Nokia and Ericsson's participation. So why I gave that example is here in India, like Uday and others mentioned, to promote network-enabled manufacturing, there are actually different things that we said. There is one part which is the actual network. Then you have the devices. Then the most important part is you have to create a software stack that allows network functions in a way that has to be exposed to the users, because nobody wants to understand whether, you know, there is a handoff that is going to happen when a robot moves from here to there, and hence he has to stop or do something, right? So all those things have to be abstracted, and so that kind of exposure layer has to build. There is another layer of software that has to be built so as to make networks easy to deploy. So there are so many problems to be solved. And in these use cases lab, and I want to be a bit provocative, Mittalji here, is that, I mean, there is a specific thing where, you know, government should do. So Monica said it is only, so all these use case labs are only open for domestic manufacturers. So which means that you want to attack all the problems at once with domestic stakeholders. One way or one possibility to look at it is you can have different, of these 100 use case lab, you can have 25 use cases lab where you are focusing on, say, for example, devices, use cases. There you can get more mature equipment vendors from outside so that at least those labs get set up. Then in the other 25 labs, you get domestic vendors for the network equipment, and you get device manufacturers software stack from outside. So that kind of a hybrid approach in a way that actually suits our strengths has to be seen here. Like in US, they are actually relying on their strength in terms of web skillers and, you know, software providers, Amazons, Googles of the world. I mean, those are the ones who are, you know, their strength. And then they are collaborating with others in the world to develop that ecosystem and develop all the products. So all I can say is that maybe government can take a cue, and there are many friends of India, and I think we should leverage that friendship. If we don't use that, then it's probably wasting that opportunity.
So, I think I personally really agree to what Satish just said. Another thing of what MHI can do is, so taking a cue of what other countries have done. So for example, when the Winter Olympics happened in South Korea, the entire South Korea gave a push to 5G deployment as an initiative for Winter Olympics. Paris Olympics are happening in 2024, and Capgemini is a French organization. The entire Olympic village will be 5G enabled. The latest of the use cases, be it smart campus, be it smart games, everything are being deployed as a showcase, and the entire campus will be 5G enabled. So similarly, perhaps MHI could look at some industrial corridor, which we have. We have industrial export zones and all. Make one as a 5G campus and use that. And at least our learning globally, and I hope all other panelists will agree, the journey from the labs to the industrial environment is the most difficult one. And that is where MHI can come and play a role. The labs is something which the Department of Telecom is pushing the equipment and the infra. You all push the demand. Hopefully the two will converge and magic will happen.
Great, thank you. I think that's a very concrete suggestion of setting up this real live use case centers in some sense, where it can be a great place for others to come and learn, and and vendors to come and showcase technologies. I think it will really spur the entire ecosystem. Now, I think we have a few more minutes left, and we would like to invite the audience to ask a few questions or comments. Yeah.
Can I? Dwarkanath, my guru. Today is Guru Purnima. My guru is there. Okay, I am Chandramouli. I am zero on technology, especially maybe minus on 5G technology or telecommunications. The question I want to ask you, if the entire value chain Take, for example, an automobile industry, from tier 3, tier 2, tier 1 to the OEM, such as Tata Motors, Toyota, TVS Motor, etc. Can we look at a seamless integration of the NEM, as it were, and look at the project in a holistic manner, which I call as a hub and spoke model, right? And we made this proposal to Honorable FM also a couple of years back. Various forums. Hello. Hello. Yeah, moment I said this, it went off. Anyway, so how do we make sure that such a technology has a far-reaching implication and not look at point solutions in MSMEs, in a company, etc., etc. If the Olas and Zomatos of the world could exploit IoT, right? The manufacturing subsystem can exploit it only when the entire value chain of a given company and then multiplies over several companies can do that. So I could not get that in the panel discussion. So if you can throw some light on it. Thank you, sir.
Would you like to?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a very utopian world that we are envisaging. Like I said in the beginning, it's all about economics, right? Network is just one infrastructure enabler. You need to bring down, you need to create new products, right? You need to innovate on new products. You need to make products smarter, capable of harnessing the power of 5G. You need to build software on top of the network for seamless connection between multiple supply chain vendors. You need open networks that will communicate with tier 3, 2, and build this basically what we're talking about is a just-in-time network, which is the holy grail of manufacturing. As and when I need material, it's available at the lowest cost. And as I produce, there is somebody who's ready to consume, right? If you're able to build that seamless network, also create demand, right? You need someone to buy the products also. Then I think it is a possibility. But market dynamics will always come into picture. Competition will come into picture. You will always have pressures on both sides. But it's what everyone aims for, and tough one, but it's a dream.
Hello. Just to add to that point as a follow-up question. Today in this country, Toyota is 100% on just-in-time. They got a third rank or consistently over 15 years. They physically went and saw it. So for the manufacturing subsystem, it is no more a dream. If the IoT subsystem can enable this, I humbly say, a project on this nature is very much possible. When we talk blockchain technology, we talk the same thing, right? Thank you, sir.
I think it's a very interesting perspective is saying, can we take a slice, end-to-end slice, and really showcase and, kind of develop that? And it's something for us to think about. One last final question, I guess, before we
think
go.
that this is, can you hear me? And that the mic works? Taking the point on what Monica said and what Professor Yu said as well. 5G, you said, is the first mobile technology for industry. I don't know, but just say why you think, what makes industries that make that first one. The second one is that do we need to be worrying about cybersecurity if 5G is getting adapted? And the skill levels will be quite high, for 5G in terms of the usage as well. The last point, I think, Professor, would be time to ask this question, I didn't get the answer. What are the alternatives we have for 5G?
Okay, so 3 questions. First one, why did I say that it's the first generation of industrial technology? So the feedback from the industry and the enterprises all along to the mobile technology, and this is to the standard bodies of ITU, 3GPP and all, was that mobile technology has always been very consumer focused. And which is where IMT 2020 vision was set up way back in 2012 to gather the requirements from the industries, and which is where then, all these requirements came in from 5G SAI and many other. There was European Union's 5G PPP program and many other such programs where these requirements came from the industry, which constituted all the requirements which Uday and all of us have mentioned about, high latency, high throughput, low latency, data being on-site, basically the concept of private networks, security, to which you mentioned, basically a security by design. Also industrial features like location positioning, deterministic latency, time sensitive or time guaranteed protocols over 5G. So this is the reason why it's the first generation. Prior to this, all other standards were more of consumer focus. So that's the first question. The second question was about cybersecurity. So 5G by design has this, and also, end-to-end enterprise architecture, including wireless communications. How to address security in that is a topic. I think that risk is higher with Wi-Fi because it's an unlicensed and unsecure technology. There are already solutions available with 5G. One, the technology supports security, and two, using quantum encryption and many other solutions. Security is definitely a key point of 5G. And the third one you said about...
That was more, I was looking towards it to say that you asked this question twice about alternative. Did you get an answer? So each must answer.
Yes, there are alternatives to 5G, the most obvious being Wi-Fi and even satellite in some cases. So just to add to your first thing, and then I'll come to your second question also. So why we call 5G as something as the first generation is that because even the earlier generations supported some sort of IoT. It's not that you cannot, the most widespread IoT network in the world is based on 2G because of the great reach that it has, because the spectrum it has. So each generation supported some specific use cases. But then when 5G was big, it was actually built in such a way that it scales from use case that Uday mentioned, a very broad highway, very high data rate, very low latency, plus all the other use cases which are having lesser requirements. So that kind of scalability is coming from 5G. And then, so, that's why it comes. But then, like any other technology, you started with voice, digital voice coming in 2G, but at scale, it comes only after some time. So that came in 3G. Data got introduced in 3G. At scale, that you can now sit and do your email sitting here can be done only at when we had 4G. Similarly, 5G is the beginning. Things will take some time to mature, and it will probably, by the time we reach 6G, 5G will be mature and it will be available at scale. Then in terms of other technologies, the way 5G approaches is that it is not taking them as alternatives or competitors. The architecture of 5G is such that you can leverage Wi-Fi with the same core network application infrastructure without any disruption to the users of the technology. Whether you want to use Wi-Fi as an access, satellite as an access, native 3GPP or 5G radio as an access. So that's why 5G, in some sense, at least conceptually, is a very attractive technology because it does not look at other technologies as competitors, but it is an umbrella which can encompass all these alternate / competing technologies for wherever it fits best.
I think we're negative in time, but maybe one last very quick question and maybe a quick answer if it's a question.
Hello.
Yeah. Obviously, I think 5G seems to be a very disruptive technology, especially when it comes to manufacturing, because you see most of the manufacturing is running on field bus. Like you have EtherCAT, Ethernet, Profinet, and all of these are being the companies who have promulgated the standards, they're very protective about it. So how do you see, in a way you are trying to compete and disrupt the existing field bus networks, which have been implemented almost all in, if you go to the bigger companies, almost 100% of them are either on one of them, and there's an entire ecosystem that's being built in terms of the standards, the conversion from one protocol to the other one. So how does 5G play out in this?
See, 5G and access technology, okay? all the protocols you have mentioned, they're actually connecting sensors. But you have to cluster the sensors. Then between the sensors, you can have this access technology through, it is called G Node B in the 5G. So you can always have NB-IoTs, you have IoTs, you have a cluster of sensors, and they can talk to each other. So you can always have a hybrid way of, we call it as a multi-RAT technology, multiple radio access technologies you can always use. And you can embrace each other and coexist as well. Yeah. And security will work very, very well. As long as end-to-end is an IP, you will have a security is also managed.
You're not really talking about 5G as a period.
No, you see, you can have a 5G end-to-end. You can have NB-IoT or IoT in the final access to the sensors. Let's say you have a furnace. In the furnace, you have some 100 sensors, temperature, pressure, and your all the chemical measurements, everything you are doing. That you can cluster it, you can sensitize all the data. Like somebody was saying, I think, say petabytes of data, out of which not even 10%, is actually 1% is useful. All this data crunching and everything you can do on the edge and bring it on the 5G and start working on it. So there are various architectures based on which you can creatively use this technology.
Can I make just one comment? Also, just sharing it for the industry, 5G ACI has a publicly available document where how does all different industrial protocols get supported over 5G. I can share that document also. It has examples, designs, and also examples of companies in Europe, Fraunhofer, HMS, and others who have developed these industrial protocol converters, gateways, and all. So that document, I think, is very helpful because obviously you will not rip and replace. So this document is publicly available by 5G ACI.
Thank you so much. It was really wonderful discussion. I think it's great to have all these experts share their view and also really nice set of questions. I think with this, we'll close the panel discussion, but hopefully you can interact with the panelists after this and maybe during dinner and probe further. So thank you.